The consolidation of 5-step brain-based learning and flipped classroom to enhance creative thinking skill. I'm Rosniza binti Saleh from University Pendidikan Sultan Idris, Tanjung Malim, Perak. Our content for this slide is 1. Introduction, methodology, findings and discussion, and conclusion. The challenge of this new norm provides space and opportunity for teachers to be more creative as educators in the 21st century. In Malay language subject, especially the teaching of literary components, the implementation of critical and creative thinking in the teaching and learning process was also not very successful. Some researchers are looking for methods to improve student creative thinking skills through the flipped classroom method. Hanifa et al. 2021. The practice of teaching and learning through flipped classroom is in line with the 21st century learning approach, namely communicative, collaborative, critical, and creative thinking and values. Charlotte et al. 2020. Teachers reported that due to flipping their classes, they gained more time for student-centered learning activities, where learners were more actively involved in the learning process. Mahad, Saiful Bahri, Hashim, Nayan, and Saleh 2021. Flipped classroom learning method is a different method from ordinary or traditional learning that has been practiced by teachers, can be done at any time, and is flexible. What's more interesting is that there are also researchers who combine flipped classroom with a brain-based learning approach to develop students' thinking skills. Paristiwati et al. 2020. The integration of a flipped classroom and brain-based learning can increase students' learning readiness, provide comfort in learning, maximize the left and right brain performance, and develops student critical thinking skills. Did you know what is brain-based learning? Brain-based learning is a teaching and learning method designed to match the nature and way the brain functions and learn. Sosa 2017, during learning, brain cells, neurons, become active when receiving stimuli from the sensory organ, then build neural connection to store information received from the learning activity. And what is flipped classroom? Flipped classroom teaching and learning has two main components, namely online learning done by individuals outside of the class time through printed materials or learning videos, and combined with interesting activities and student-centered learning activities performed by teachers during teaching and learning session in the classroom. However, teachers actually face problems to plan and implement their lesson using flipped classroom. Designing lesson plans for flipped classroom inquiry scenario can be challenging for educators, and research on teachers' lesson planning practice for flipped classroom scenario is lacking. Objective research question and hypothesis. Objective: tracking consolidation of the 5-step brain-based learning model and flipped classroom to enhance creative thinking skills in language learning. Research questions: are there significant difference in terms of creative thinking skills between students exposed to flipped classroom and 5-step of brain-based learning with students receiving conventional instruction? The null hypothesis: there was no significant difference in terms of post-test score on creative thinking skills between students exposed to flipped classroom and 5-step of brain-based learning with students receiving conventional instruction. So, to help teachers enhance their creative thinking skill among the students, 5-step brain-based learning and flipped classroom activity can use. We start with active initiation, immersion brain, networking neural, strengthening mind, review, reflect, and celebrate. This quasi-experiment research involved two groups of students. Teacher teaching experimental group used the 5-step brain-based learning and flipped classroom lesson plan. Meanwhile, the control group were asked to learn as usual. To assess development of creative thinking skills among the students, teacher used the 21st Century Student Skill Questionnaire instrument. This instrument used pre-test and post-test. Table 1A shows the finding of the pre-test. The finding of the pre-test shows that the mean score for experimental group and control group are almost equivalent. The data show that the difference mean score for two groups was no significant difference. After 4-week intervention sessions were implemented, the finding of the post-test showed that the mean score of experimental group increased. The mean difference value indicate that the students of the experimental group using the 5-step brain-based learning and flipped classroom consolidation lesson plan were more able to master creative thinking skills better than the control group who experienced conventional teaching. This finding allows the null hypothesis to be rejected. Students in the experimental group mastered creative thinking skill higher, and it means that the integration between 5-step brain-based learning and flipped classroom has successfully improved students' thinking skill, in turn improving listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills through language teaching. Thank you and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.